So hi everyone, welcome back. I want to welcome one of my friends and the amazing OBGYN Dr. Shieva Ghofrany. She is a board certified OBGYN who practices in Connecticut. I am going to talk to her today about sex after menopause and sexual wellness during the perimenopause and menopausal period. So welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. So fun. I always love when I get to talk to you, especially on video, and I feel like we could talk all day long and never be done.
I know. It's basically us recording one of our normal conversations.
I know, right? Good. Good.
So before we get into the actual topic, can you just tell our audience what brought you into women's health and OB and just, how you got here?
Yeah. I mean, I will give you the nutshell version because it's actually a long and winding road, but I did not do any pre-meds as an undergrad. I don't know if we ever talked about that. I think we did, but I did 4 different majors as an undergrad at Georgetown. Very wayward, didn't know what I wanted to do, and then did a post-bac program for 3 years at Columbia afterwards. This was back in the 90s. And when I finally decided to go to medical school, I really thought I would do surgery or pediatrics, mostly because that was what my parents did and that was what I knew. And I kind of immaturely thought, well, I can do those and I would like both of them and that seems good. Gynecology sounded disgusting to me, truly disgusting. And my only experience with gynecology was having had HPV myself and being completely freaked out and thinking I was going to die from cervical cancer. But my obstetrics and gynecology rotation in medical school was so impactful and amazing. And then I realized that as an OBGYN, you can operate and be a primary care doctor, which is what surgery and pediatrics was, all mixed into one. So that's why I went into it. And then I started to really realize through the last decade, what I realized I love most is not the medicine or the healing, but it's really just, I love talking to women and engaging with them. It's just fun. Like I really love that I get to talk to them about all these different issues. And I keep joking, like I'm the hair club member and hair club president, because I've, for better or for worse, been through so many weird gynecological things myself that I can relate. And I think that, a lot of people are smarter in the actual gynecology world, but I can relate to them. And I think that that's just helpful for a lot of women.
Oh yeah. I mean, I remember when I first sort of met you via social media was that, I was so shocked by how many things you've gone through yourself. You're a cancer survivor and so many,
it's weird, right? It's funny.
I mean, I'm so grateful that you came into my life because I have you on speed text, where I'm like, oh my God, what do I do about this? And what medicine can I take when I'm pregnant? All this stuff.
Yeah.
So very, very, very grateful. But so getting, I guess, not to sort of turn too quickly, but I definitely want to talk to you about our topic today, which is menopause and sexual health in that period of your life. So just to get the discussion started, how many of your patients sort of ask you about this? Is it a taboo topic? Do they feel uncomfortable asking you about it? What's the whole deal with am I going to have sex
right
20 years from now or 30 years from now? What does it look like for me and for any other woman that's
or 5 because you're a new mom? No, I'm kidding. And put it this way. Listen, I think that we know that generally it is not so much taboo as much as I think because we all go through life as women, assuming that everybody else is having sex, everybody else is really happy, everybody else, right? Because we see what's on social media, especially, and we see what's in the movies that we assume that we're outliers. So there's that aspect of it. I think in my practice, women know they can talk to me, but even those women, I'll kind of bring up as I'm examining them and I see that they have atrophy, which again, the word atrophy means the vagina is less elastic. We say dry, but that's the wrong word. Okay. So I'll see that it's less elastic. Let's say they're in their 40s or 50s. And I'll say, oh, any trouble when you're having sex? And I'll kind of joke because I don't want them to think that they have to pretend to me that they're having sex. And I'll say if you're even having sex, which is really common if you're not, and then they'll kind of say oh, I'm really not. I just don't feel like it. And so that kind of opens the door. And so to answer your first question, how many times a day? I mean, yesterday, I'll give you an example. I saw 30 women. Let's say 6 of them were OB. The rest were all GYN. Some were young, but the majority were women in their, let's say, late 30s to 60s. Mm-hmm. And every single one, I will tell you, said some version of either it was uncomfortable or they just don't feel like it. And why is that? And is that abnormal? And I kind of went through multiple iterations of it's completely normal, especially once you're in menopause. You're not supposed to want to because we're done with childbearing. Mm-hmm. Why did nature or God create us this way? I don't know. Yeah. So it is. Well, it's crazy. And and I've said to them, I always joke that I like to play this little game called Unicorns or Liars, because if you're in a room with all your friends and they're all saying like they're all wanting to have sex all the time with their husbands when they're in their 40s or 50s, they're either unicorns or they're liars. But there's a lot more liars in the world than unicorns, because the majority of women don't want to, and that's okay. So I think first and foremost, we should know that it's normal. But we should also recognize that it is healthy for us to want to, or to try to, because we've created lives where we're going to live together with our spouses for a long time.
Right.
So we can try to treat it.
Right.
Meaning, we can treat the atrophy. So we can treat the inelasticity and make that better. The libido part is such a challenge because they haven't come up with any great medications. They keep trying. You know, there's a few medications out,
right,
none of which are that effective at all.
That's unfortunate.
It's unfortunate. Yeah.
What actually brought these patients in? Was it that issue, or was this something that you had to sort of dig in a little bit to get to?
Most of them, no, but the majority were just there like for their annual, or a couple were there because of either pelvic pain or because they had like recurrent urinary tract infections or recurrent yeast infections, and they didn't necessarily even perceive that it was because of perimenopausal or postmenopausal atrophy. But in talking about that stuff, I also would bring up sex and things like that. So none of them came in. I will say occasionally some patients do come in just for libido and sex, but not the majority of them. I think that they would. I think that many women do realize that there's not a ton to do about it, you know, because they've heard or read.
And so is there really anything? So let's talk about vaginal atrophy first. What are some of the things that you do to treat that?
So the great news about atrophy, I say, is it happens to everyone, but we can treat it. So you can easily treat it with vaginal estrogens, and they're safe for pretty much everybody, including women who are at risk, like women who have had breast cancer can use vaginal estrogen. And there's great data, like tons of retrospective data and prospective data. Sorry, my puppy's right here. And there's different formulations. So there's tablet, there's suppository, there's ring, there's cream. And they're all really safe. The oncologist would rather women not use the cream, for example, if they've had breast cancer, because there's some variability in how it's absorbed. But outside of that, they can use it. So that should, you know, I say to women, the downsides to the cream is it's not always covered by insurance. The package insert will say risk of cancer and risk of blood clot, but that's just because they're quoting the oral data, and it has to be used regularly. But the upside is when you use it, it works really well, right? So that's great. The unfortunate truth is that getting your vagina to be less uncomfortable is really important, but it's not going to change what's happening here, right? So for atrophy, we can use vaginal estrogen, we can use vaginal DHEAS. You've probably heard of those vaginal procedures where they do different, either laser or oh my gosh, what's the other term? Laser or vaginal probe. Can't think of the other term, but there's two vaginal probes that they use to basically stimulate the collagen in the vagina.
And it works.
And they work. Yeah. I mean, they stimulate the collagen. They're unfortunately not really FDA approved. So there's a lot of controversy because they've used terms like vaginal rejuvenation to imply that they're kind of, you know, getting it to be younger, as opposed to really doing what they're supposed to be doing, which is improving atrophy. Right. So
some of the symptoms of atrophy, like what do women know?
Oh, you would know. And here's the thing. You might have noticed it, for example, when you're nursing. I don't know if you've even attempted anything, but when you're nursing, so the times that are common to have atrophy, first and foremost is during menopause, because the lack of estrogen causes the vagina, and again, we'll say dry, but it's not dry. You can still get lubricated, but it'll be less elastic. So it'll either it'll be challenging for him to put the penis inside, or he puts it inside and then it just feels like sandpaper, or just like when something rubs against it, it will just burn. So that's one thing. Women will get recurrent urinary tract infections from it. So they'll notice it postmenopausally. They'll notice it when they're nursing, because when you're nursing, your estrogen levels are really low. And so it's kind of nature's mechanism of stopping you from getting pregnant right? Because after you've had a baby, most women shouldn't get pregnant for about a year because you're nursing for that year. So that's the way nature stopped you from getting pregnant was low libido from low estrogen, no desire to get pregnant, to have sex, and your vagina would hurt. So you would not have sex, right? And then the third time is actually when you're on prolonged birth control pills, because of that steady dose of progesterone and estrogen, even though you're getting oral estrogen, but it's a steady dose, some of those women will also get signs of atrophy where their labia are just less elastic. Because when we have sex and we get stimulated, what's supposed to happen is our vagina is supposed to lengthen and it's supposed to get really lubricated, and it's supposed to be more elastic.
Right.
So unfortunately, if we kind of just go through the motions, then that lack of elasticity doesn't kind of help it lubricate and elongate and do all those things. In menopause, you can still lubricate. You can still maybe get, again, blood lengthening, but
Right.
that inability to be elastic really causes so much irritation to the point where the opening, what we call the introitus, can actually shrink.
Oh, wow.
So it really is a problem. And again, I'm still shocked. Like, I did a video 3 weeks ago, I think, on atrophy. 30,000 people watched it. Like, it was my most watched video. I was shocked.
So people need to know this stuff.
And again, to me, it's still surprising that so many women don't know about it. Like, they're still so surprised. I mean, the messages that I would get were, oh my God, I didn't realize that's what was going on,
Yeah.
which just means we're not doing as good a job as we think about, getting the word out there and talking about it.
Well, this is one of
Now we're going to do it. I know.
one of the reasons
I know.
we're doing this.
I know.
Well, it's interesting. I'm learning a lot too, because, when we started this discussion, I thought we were going to be mainly focused on menopause and perimenopause. And I didn't know that long-term birth control use, which I'm sure is extremely common. So many young women do that. And do you know, like, after how long young women may notice that, like the ones who are on
It seems to depend. And I have to be honest, I don't know if there's actually good studies or data. So I have to tell you, I'm going to look now that we're talking about it, because it seems like it's anecdotally, I'll tell you, the people I notice it most in are the very lean women, because you know that fat cells have estrogen. So heavier women have our own endogenous estrogen that we're secreting from our fat cells. So very lean women who are on it for several months to a couple of years will often come to me and say, I just don't feel like, it really hurts when I have sex. What's going on? And when I examine them, we'll notice that their labia seem to be less elastic. And so one of the ways that we've been able to kind of improve it or plump it up is either take them off birth control pills, or if they don't want to go off the birth control pills, give them vaginal estrogen to plump it back up again. So I would say probably at least several months, if not a couple years. And again, anecdotally, I've seen it more in the thinner, leaner women. But I don't know if there's data to support that, so I'll see.
And how long after treatment do you feel like these women sort of notice an improvement or come back?
Usually we say 6 weeks. So typically, like, I'll say to a postmenopausal woman, perimenopausal woman, lactating woman, it takes about 6 weeks. Someone will notice a little bit of improvement before that, but what happens is the estrogen has to get into the tissue and then plump it back up. So again, the upside is it really works when you use it. The downside is you have to use it continuously, and you have to use it for several weeks. And when it's the cream, you're using it twice a week regularly. Right. So I'll have women come in and say, you know what, the cream doesn't work. And I would say, but did you use it regularly? Well, I used it and then I stopped.
Yeah.
And I'll have to say, okay, why'd you stop? Well, I didn't realize I had to continue, and even though I talk a lot and I say to them, remember I told you twice a week for as long as you want to have sex. But it's just something that they don't realize the maintenance effect of it. But when it comes to menopause, menopausal symptoms like hot flashes, night sweats, things like that, they'll often get better within 3 to 5 years after menopause, but atrophy will not. Atrophy is the one symptom that for almost all women will only continue to get worse and worse, which is, again, shocking to me that the majority of women don't realize it or know it, and we don't talk about it enough.
Does it start with perimenopause, or does it start with?
It can.
Okay.
Yeah, it can. Not always. I mean, again, some women are lucky. And I do have some women in menopause who they look completely atrophic. And I'll ask them, and I'm really honest. And I'm like, really? It doesn't bother you at all? And they're like, no, I'm just using some lubricant and I'm fine.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so you mentioned birth control when women are nursing, and obviously perimenopause and menopause.
Yep.
So, is basically they would need to be on vaginal estrogen, like, if you're a young woman on birth control, right? I mean, you would need to have it your whole life, possibly?
Well, but think about it. So most young women, let's say you're 22, you've been on birth control, or between 22 and 28, you're on birth control and you're super lean and you feel it. The chances are at some point you're going to go off birth control because you're going to get pregnant. Mm-hmm. Or some of those women, I'll have a discussion with them and we'll talk about going off birth control pills, and they'll go on the IUD because then they're going back into ovulation. So their hormones are back to normal, but they still have birth control. Right. So I can't say it's a huge number of women who have that, but it is a decent number. In fact, a lot of women will have changes in their vagina as far as the, again, like we talked about, the balance in their vagina, and they don't necessarily notice the atrophy, but they'll notice recurrent yeast infections or recurrent BV, again, because of that evening out of their hormones changes what's going on in their vaginal flora.
Right. Right.
So
And
while listen, birth control pills are great. I'm a huge advocate for them, but we know that they do affect us,
yeah,
thankfully,
yeah,
right? And so that can have side effects to it. Yeah.
yeah. No, I
But
mean,
yes,
birth control. I mean, yeah. I mean,
that's the whole point. We want it to affect us, right? But
yeah,
that's like anything. It's got side effects.
affect us.
Yeah.
No one wants
Right.
ineffective birth control.
Right. We want it to affect us in different ways. But yeah, so to answer your question, as long as you are atrophic, if you are atrophic, whatever is causing it, you would have to use the estrogen during it. But most of the things that are causing it outside of menopause are short-lived, right?
Okay.
Nursing is short-lived. Birth control pills tend to be short-lived. Women who are on tamoxifen because of breast cancer, if they're young, that's different, but most of them end up going through menopause and then they end up needing it indefinitely anyway.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned the low libido also in menopause,
Yeah.
perimenopause, and there's truly really nothing to do. I mean, what do you tell?
And I don't want to say there's nothing. There are products. So there's an over-the-counter product called Ristella that is very safe. It's Swedish flower extract, and it showed promising results in studies. I would say anecdotally, marginal results with my patients. There's a new injectable called Vyleesi that is melanocortin, which was a hormone that they found. I think the story was that bodybuilders were using it to get tan, and they found that the side effect was their libido was improved. So it came out about a year ago. Twice a week, you're allowed to use it as an injectable to improve your libido. But the side effect is that up to 30% of the time, nausea can occur. So it's kind of been a hard sell. And I don't love to adopt, brand new medications until there's like longer data.
Right. No.
There was another one called Addyi, A-D-D-Y-I. It was kind of a funny name. And that, again, had some side effects. You weren't allowed to drink on it. And it improved like the number of sexual encounters by something like 1 to 2 a month. So again, marginal results. If you talk to certain groups, there are some women who are using testosterone. And I can't say that's wrong. I would say that the data is variable. And there are some, unfortunately, dangerous side effects to testosterone because it can increase your lipid profile and it can cause unsightly side effects like acne and hair and things like that. Though those women will tell you that they have far better libido. The problem for us with libido, as you can guess, right? Men have testosterone. That's why they care about having sex. And that's why largely they don't seem to care. We always joke like whether or not you look thin or fat. Like we think that men care how we look, but I think we really know that they don't care. They're just happy to be there, as I joke. It's a very multifactorial event, right? And so for us, some of the data shows that after 3 to 5 years with your partner, whether, by the way, you are with a male partner or female partner. So they found this with lesbians and with heterosexuals. After 3 to 5 years, something changes in our brain chemistry and we perceive our partner in a much more kind of collegial, like we really love them, but we perceive them in a almost like a brother-sister type of way or sister-sister type of way. So that excited sexual feeling is gone. And so the hard part is, how do you fix that part of the libido? So years ago, there was a medication that they were studying called Librido that was meant to kind of almost trick your neurotransmitters into thinking that your partner was like someone else.
Right.
But something happened and it has not come out. So the FDA didn't approve it and I don't know why. But it's a challenge. And I do think that I think with effort, women can do well. And there are some couples who do really well sexually because they make a big effort. And I always joke, it's almost like exercise, right? If you believe it's important and you make an effort and you commit to it, you can have a very satisfying sexual relationship. But it takes effort, right? And you have to kind of buy into the necessity of it. If you just kind of want it to happen, that's not necessarily going to be the way it is. And I think that's what we all kind of grow up wanting to believe, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, I totally think that's reasonable, right? Like it's so different to have a partner after 5, 10, 15 years versus,
The beginning.
The first date, and then if you've had children together and if you don't have time for each other
right. And you're living together and you're going through a lot of the mundane everyday things.
Yeah. And you see each other when you don't look your best ever.
Right. Right. and
now,
again, and they have testosterone to overcome that, but
right.
we don't.
Yeah. And in a pandemic where you just are kind of like have let go of a lot of things.
Right.
Like, I mean, I 100% have sweatpants on right now.
Yeah. I believe you.
Well, no, this has been a great discussion. And I mean, I know we could talk about this for hours. Like we usually end up talking for hours about things.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to sign off soon. So before we go, can you tell everyone where they can find you on social media and, any kind of online presence so people can connect with you?
Yeah. Well, I'm mostly on Instagram. So my handle is at Big Love Fierce Juju, or they can find me in my name, Shieva Ghofrany. I'm on Facebook a little bit as well. I have not yet delved into the LinkedIn or Twitter situation. And I have a couple of things in the pipeline. So I'm looking forward to creating a couple of new things, like a membership model and some other fun stuff. Because I do think women really need more information. And I keep saying it's not their doctor's fault. The model of medicine has really changed, and doctors just don't have enough time to be able to talk about some of the emotional aspects that can really help women heal. So I am happy to do it because I like to be able to talk.
Yes, no, and when we'll send everyone your way, because I know I'm really excited for what you have in the pipeline. So I can't wait to see it.
Well, I love you, and you are amazing. I love all the stuff you do. It's
uh,
miraculous how much you managed to do. I'm shocked.
well, as someone said this to me the other day, and I said I don't do it all. I have so much help. So I mean, everyone's like, "How do you do it all?" And I was like, "Well, I have a lot of family that supports me, and it's
good.
Yeah, I'm very lucky."
And
but
you're
thank
smart.
you. Thank you. I appreciate it. All right. Well, we will see you online. And thank you so much for being here. And, I love everything that you talk about. And I'm always your number one supporter. So I will see you on Instagram. And just big love, Fierce Juju.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. Which is like your personality. So.
Big. All right.